All in favor? Show of hands. Thank you. All right, comprehensive plan, economic development. Joe?
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. Tonight, the board, you continue your process of updating your comprehensive plan. So you're updating it for a couple of reasons. First of all, the last time it was developed was 2008, so it's due for an update. But also, the reason you're updating it is it was developed before you had a strategic plan. Strategic plan, again, was a year-long effort, started in 2017, ended in 2018, where the community was asked, what do they like about Zebulon that they don't want to see changed? What would they like to see different about Zebulon in the year 2030? And in essence, while I'm paraphrasing, I'm going to get it pretty close. The vision that they that it represented, what they were saying is, they recognized that Zebulon was and will be a growing and vibrant downtown, but they wanted to maintain their small town charm and heritage. And so with that, the strategic plan was created to focus on 3 areas: small town life, vibrant downtown, and growing smart, so that this board and community would develop the projects, the programs, and the policies that would advance in those 3 areas to meet that vision by or before 2030. Now tonight you're going to hear some projects and some programs and some policies that are related to those focus areas. They're not necessarily mutually exclusive to those areas. So as an example, you're going to hear tonight about how to create a vibrant downtown through joining the North Carolina Main Street program. While having commercial diversity and having more events downtown will create a vibrant downtown, it's also a way to grow smart because you already have it, that part of town is within your existing service areas. It's not like one of these new subdivisions where you have to build a new fire station. As an example, the fire station is already there. Also, because that represents the highest amount of tax value per square foot, any investment downtown is going to produce a much greater return on any type of capital investment that you put down there as opposed to more greenfields or outlying subdivision. And the vibrant downtown is also a way to have small town life. Unlike some subdivisions where you have recreation centers that are open just to that subdivision, downtown is an area that is in of itself open to everybody. It is also a way for you to tap into some hidden advantages that you have that many towns don't. It is, in effect, your planned development district, and what that means is you have a commercial district surrounded by a residential district, so that residential district feeds the commercial district. There are towns that spend an awful lot of money to create that, and you already have that. And so that is yet another example of when you have a vibrant downtown with a humming commercial sector supported by a residential sector, it's another example of growing smart. So you're going to hear tonight part of the economic development chapter of your comprehensive plan as it relates to downtown. You're also going to get an update on your land use and your transportation chapters. You'll hear them together because they both go together. So as an example, as you've heard from me before about this notion of the harvest production cycle, where formerly the land was used to grow tobacco, and the transportation network that supported that was 2-lane hard surface roads to go from the farm to the depot. Well, now that land use is changing, and so your transportation network has to change to support that. So you'll hear an update on the transportation and land use chapters of your comprehensive plan. And then we'll finish out the night by giving you, providing you an update of the negotiations that we're having with the city of Raleigh on how to retire your merger agreement sooner. And I'll come back to the podium and give you the updates on where we are in that process. With that said, I'll recognize Michael Clark of the staff to introduce the subjects that he's got as well as the speakers that are here to present to you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. Tonight, you're going to hear a series of presentations, actually. The first of which is primarily focused around economic development. We contracted with Dan Douglas, who is the head of Urban Strategies Group. He has a vast experience in downtown revitalization, including working with the city of Raleigh as part of their revitalization project, as well as several other communities across the East Coast. We were able to contract with him to provide an overview of discussions with our downtown business owners and property owners to better understand their needs and desires to be successful. These meetings took place over 4 meetings. The first one was to get a good idea and then of what those challenges were. And we took the 3 most prevalent topics, and then each of the following meetings were focused in on those individual topics. Following Dan's presentation, we're going to hear from Teresa Piner, who the town has contracted to act as the town's first downtown associate community coordinator. She's going to provide an overview of what the DAC program is, how it's a subcomponent of the North Carolina Main Street program, and more importantly, what does it mean for the town of Zebulon? After she is done, I'm going to get back up here and provide some overviews of both regulations and incentives that the town is going to be putting forward in 2021. Some of those are going to be code regulations or sticks to really encourage and require property owners to maintain their property to a higher standard than they may have done it so in the past. And the second part is going to be carrots or grant incentives, which will be part of the budget process, primarily relating to infrastructure, as well as streetscape and facade improvement, as well as some highlights of some future grants that we may be requesting in the future. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dan Douglas to begin his portion.
Good evening, and thanks for having me. I think David summarized, or Michael summarized it pretty well. The listening sessions we held with downtown property owners, businesses, and interested stakeholders. Let's just look, why do we look at changes in downtown right now? There's a new downtown organization coming, as Michael alluded to, through the Main Street program, and downtown was cited as the highest priority for enhancements in the comprehensive plan community survey. Obviously, growth is accelerating here, and downtown investment is beginning to pick up. There's a logo for the Main Street organization. You've started the associate community process, and of course, Teresa's on board now as the coordinator. There's the 28% of folks that replied to the survey said downtown enhancements and improvements were a priority. There's your growth chart. I'm sure you all know it. Subdivisions, certificates of occupancy are doubling almost year over year. Here's some of the new downtown investments: the bridal shop and the Whitley Gallery, the mural project, the old Raleigh Distillery and the Pope Building. It's underway. The alley activation project, but I think looks really nice. And the listening sessions agenda, we did hold an introductory session where we asked people what are the main challenges and opportunities, and to prioritize what they thought were the top 3. And then in the following meetings, we drilled down on each of those priorities. The top 3 challenges cited by this group were walkability, and that's to generally improve the perception of safety for pedestrians in downtown, and that the truck traffic is disruptive. Parking is number 2, and there's a perception that it can be difficult to find parking in downtown. Let me just say, I've been working in downtowns for 30 years, and I've never worked in one that didn't have a parking problem. I mean, every downtown, as Americans, if we can't park in front of where we want to go, anytime we want to go there, it's a problem. And then the last one was destination development, and this is kind of all-encompassing, but it focused mainly on the high number of vacant spaces in downtowns. We talked about encouraging new development, redevelopment. How do we fill up the upper stories? And right now, there's a perception out there that the cost to renovate would not be covered by the rents that could be achieved. The summary of the first session on walkability, what were the points that the group brought up? Again, this idea that it's not safe, that there's too much truck traffic, and could we explore using some traffic calming measures like bulb outs or traffic circles to improve the pedestrian environment, sort of shorten crossing distances, slow down some of the traffic? And I have to acknowledge lighting was brought up repeatedly. in every discussion, that the lighting in downtown, it appears dark, it's not well lit, and especially behind buildings where we'd like to ask in the next section for employees to park, people don't feel safe necessarily, not because you have a crime problem, but because it's dark. And that, lastly, we're missing some good links between downtown and adjacent neighborhoods, that there should be a strong connection, as the manager mentioned earlier, that you have a lot of residential development nearby, old neighborhoods, and we got to make it easy for those folks to walk downtown because they're the closest market you have. Here's some of the graphics, this idea of exploring a truck route, maybe Route 39, something a lot of communities have done. You'll have to work with NCOD DOT to sort of work through that, and I understand Michael has already reached out to them and it's beginning to have some of those discussions. This is an example from a town not quite dissimilar to Zebulon. This is Dillon in South Carolina. It's most famous because of the sort of gaudy hotel that's there south of the border, but it's a town of about 5,000 in a growing part of the state. They got a big new intermodal transfer facility there that's driving growth, and this is their main street now during one of their festivals. And you can see the distance of the crosswalks across the street. They have a 4-lane main street, and it's about 90 feet you have to walk across the street, and they hired our firm to help think about a new streetscape, and this is it. You can see the brick bulb outs there. We narrowed Main Street. It only has about 5,000 cars a day, so there's no reason for 4 lanes. So we took 2 lanes out, added a lot more parking, widened the sidewalks, narrowed the crosswalks, put high visibility crosswalk markings in, and then the logo of the community is there at the intersection to sort of welcome people into downtown and let them know it's a different type of environment. Listening session 2 was about parking. As I mentioned, the problem is employees are parking in the best spaces on street and taking them up all day because there's no real enforcement of the 2-hour or 3-hour time limit. This is not uncommon in almost every community I work in. This is a problem. And on-street parking space in front of a business, some economists think is worth about $10,000 a year in sales. So if your employee's out there all day, or 2 or 3 of them, you're actually hurting your own business to the tune of $20,000 or $30,000 a year in sales. But the options for them are not great. There's not a lot of off-street spaces available for employees. Behind the shops, as I mentioned, is the obvious location. You're lucky that you have this alley access. A lot of towns, don't have that, the alley system. But these locations need to be well marked and lit to make them feel safe. And if new lots are created, there needs to be a way for private lot developers to recoup the cost to create the lots. Maybe it's some sort of employee parking permits, a small fee that the retailer or the business pays every year to help pay for the cost of the paving and the lighting, et cetera. And maybe it's done publicly, but there were a couple members in the group that own land downtown that were private landowners that said they'd be willing to do it if there was a simple way to try to recoup the cost over time. And we need to mark the off-street lots. In the apps, everybody looks at their phone to figure out where to go and where to park. And wayfinding, which is a signage system, the international symbol for public parking is a capital P and a green circle or a blue circle. You'll see them really all over the world, and that makes it very easy for folks whose English might not be their first language or who might not see well at evenings to be able to find these lots to park. This is a typical Main Street where you have angled parking, and you want to make sure that at any time there's a couple empty spaces available. And typically that's done through parking pricing. I know you're not quite there yet as a community to charge for parking in downtown, but we did institute that program in Raleigh after much debate. Turns out the parking problem isn't so much that the people can't find a place, it's that they want to be able to leave the house with the perception in their head that they might be able to park right in front of where they're going. And the way to achieve that is on-street parking is to raise the price of the on-street parking until at any given time there's 1 or 2 empty spaces per block. And that satisfies that desire that I might be able to get there. And maybe 50% of the time you can park very close to where your end destination is. And then this is an example of an employee lot out west in Long Beach where I worked. And shade and lighting and making it real nice for employees is you don't want them to be parked in an unlit, safe, gravelly, muddy place. So, if you want to get the employees off the street, you have to make it a pleasure to park somewhere else. And then, as I mentioned, the last option is you start to grow and parking really becomes a problem. It's time to think about meters. This is an example of some wayfinding, two different types of wayfinding signage. It's a little bit hard to read here, but the upper left one is not about directions to things, but about telling people how far it is to walk there. So you might say from here, it's a 10-minute walk to downtown, and that's what the sign would say, to sort of break the people's habit of thinking it's a long distance walk all the time. And the second one is an example of the wayfinding system that my office built in Raleigh. It was extremely comprehensive, goes from the Beltline in, gives directions to people to get downtown. You might have seen the blue signs if you came into town in the last few years. Session 3 was destination development, and the stakeholders thought that we need to do something to encourage the redevelopment of vacant stores and second stories. Some of the options they discussed were reducing the hurdles to redevelopment, maybe a streamlined or expedited project review, reform the regulations that have a high cost but low benefit to the town. So you got to look at, we did this in Raleigh and looked at all of our downtown regulations, and those that weren't being enforced or couldn't be enforced, even if we wanted to, and those that cost the private sector a high number but really didn't deliver a public benefit. We did a regulatory reform package that got rid of some 56 different rules in downtown that we didn't think were beneficial. The town should investigate some key catalytic public investments that will demonstrate its commitment to downtown. You've already done some of that, but streetscape, parking, lighting we talked about, the pocket park is another example. And then maybe think about creating a signature event beyond the tree lighting and the holiday events that will draw the whole community back into downtown. And so pre-COVID, the Greater Raleigh Visitor and Convention Bureau had a signature event fund where they intended to help the 12 towns in the county that aren't Raleigh develop events that would help to draw people back into downtown, increase day visitors, and ultimately, hopefully, be developed into overnight visitors, where your event gets so popular that people travel here and stay in hotels to attend. So destination development. How do we make a downtown a more attractive place to invest, to visit, to shop, to eat, to live, and eventually play? It's not a secret. You develop a vision, you bring the community together and ask what kind of downtown do we want, and then we ask what strategies do we want to emphasize to get that downtown and when. There's sort of a logical order of the progression for downtown redevelopment. It starts with amenities, restaurants, entertainment, retail. Once the amenities are there, employers like to come because their employees like to be around those amenities. Having a lunch with a friend while you don't have to drive from work or drive somewhere, having a beer after work with a coworker, attending a concert after work. And all those amenities then attract people to live. So it starts with creating sort of the activity of food and entertainment, then it moves into job recruitment, and then eventually people decide to live there. That is exactly the progression that happened in downtown Raleigh. And then you make plans that advance your key strategies. If we decide we want it to be a food and entertainment destination, look, I'm sure everybody here is doing Christmas shopping, and how many are on Amazon doing it, right? Retail is a tough market now, and this COVID has trained people more and more to shop online, so it's tough for local retailers to make it, and so more and more downtowns are relying on entertainment and food as the draw. So if we decide that we want to have a downtown focused on that, then you need wider sidewalks for outdoor cafes, you need parking, you need a simplified way to do grease traps and things for restaurants. You need to think about what types of businesses should it be designed to support. Can we recruit, say, Ashley Christensen or some, restaurateur that everyone in Zebulon travels to go eat? Can we use their credit card data to say, look, you're getting about 10 or 15% of your sales from people in Zebulon. Maybe you ought to consider opening a restaurant here. And so it's like recruiting local chainlets, we like to call them. They're not the McDonald's and the Burger King, but they're local restaurateurs that are successful, and you want to bring them here. And then how do we get folks ultimately excited to live downtown? And as I mentioned, that progression. So what is your vision for downtown Zebulon? Well, let's look at what the competition's doing, right? Knightdale, Holly Springs, Morrisville, and in fact, just before I came, Morrisville had a new announcement in the Triangle Business Journal. They are building, those 3 towns are trying to build downtowns from scratch. You know, they don't have one. You have a nice, what we like to call good bones. Nice storefronts, nice businesses, nice sidewalks, nice sort of compact development form, as the manager said, a sort of PUD from scratch. Cary and Raleigh, their strategy was to make some big blockbuster investments in new public meeting spaces, art centers, libraries, parks. You know, we did the convention center, we opened Fayetteville Street. Cary built the art center. They're breaking ground on a new, I think, $30 million huge public park in downtown. So these are other town strategies. And I put you in this category with Apex, Fuquay, and Wake Forest. They built off their strengths. They targeted some private investments, catalyzed it in arts and entertainment and food, and then let the private market take over. Here's some examples. That's Knightdale by Station Park with the lots they're trying to sell to build a downtown from scratch. Theirs burnt down, I think, in the 40s, and they never rebuilt it. Holly Springs, again, another big town center attempt from scratch. That's Cary. Entertainment, these outdoor concerts and festivals, that's their one corner of their park where they do outdoor events. You see the stage in the foreground, and in the background is the old high school, which is now the Cary Arts Center. So they're, as I mentioned, using arts and entertainment. That's a rendering of the new park. It'll have food and all types of activities in there. Here's Fuquay, just nice streetscape. Aviator Brewing was a big catalyst for them, a private investment catalyst that went into first brewery, then distillery, then restaurant, and started bringing folks into downtown. And that sidewalk picture on the left is really important. That you got to make it easy for folks to use the public space for whether it's outdoor sales or cafes or concerts, whatever it is, you want to encourage that. Fuquay built an art center that has a small performing arts center in it and some studio space. That was a catalyst for them. Wake Forest did the Renaissance plan, a new streetscape, a new performing arts center. It's an old high school gymnasium, I think. And then now they're starting to get residential. They're a little bit ahead in the progression. And so what are the final priority recommendations? Basically the to-do list for the future for you to consider. Number 1 from the walkability priority is complete a conceptual streetscape plan to illustrate what these improvements the listening sessions proposed might look like and cost. As I mentioned, new lighting, bulb out, street tree plans, sidewalk widenings, intersection treatments, mid-block crossings, alley improvements. All these things can be designed conceptually and costed out to give you a sense of what that might entail. And I think Michael's already working on this to meet with Duke Progress to begin the effort to change out the light heads on Vance and Arundel. These are, what you have now are sodium lights, they're the orange ones, and nobody uses those anymore. Those are the sort of lighting feature from 20 years ago. You can't really recognize faces. That's why it makes it feel unsafe, because you can't see the face of someone walking towards you. And, you know, as animals, we were predated back in the old days, and so if you can't recognize who's coming your way, it makes you really nervous. It's just in our bones. That's why the hair stands up on your neck. So they've been changing out those fixtures all around the country. They own your streetlights. You lease them from them. They're not actually owned by you, so that's who you have to work with. And then meet with NCDOT to see if there's an alternate truck route. They've, in past, talked an awful lot about context-sensitive design and complete streets, so they're moving forward with policies that will do exactly what you need them to do, which is recognize this is a highway that happens to be your main street. It's not just a highway, and that they should respond accordingly when it comes into your town. Some towns have been successful with that. It takes a lot of work. The parking recommendations, begin to enforce the on-street time limit. First, notify businesses that enforcement is on the way, why the spaces are important, and then slowly begin to enforce it and try to get employees off the street. And then look for sites, public or private, to create new employee parking. Make sure it's well lit and safe, and consider this employee permit system to recoup any of your costs or the private sector's costs. And then create a wayfinding plan and a marketing plan that lets people know where all the public parking is. Destination development recommendations, define that master plan, define that vision, undertake an inclusive and expansive downtown master planning process. These listening sessions were a great toe in the water. It was about, 14 to 20 people that came over the 4 nights, but Downtown is the manager mentioned, is everyone's second neighborhood. Everyone in Zebulon should see downtown as their second neighborhood and a place that they're welcome, and they should be involved in the planning for it, not just business owners and property owners in downtown. You need to be more expansive in your inclusion. And investigate an incentive package to stimulate the rehabilitation and reuse of downtown buildings. And I would recommend with a focus on restaurants and entertainment uses, and don't time limit the incentives, right? This isn't an open checkbook for you to be helping private sector all the time. Set a deadline. Say, look, we'll have this incentive program, but for only 5 years or whatever it is, so that it's not open-ended and so that it will incent people to act quickly and not wait. And then complete a policy analysis. We like to call them a policy audit of the activities you want to occur. When I started working in Raleigh, it was almost, took 8 months to get an outdoor dining permit, right? So you open a restaurant, you want to put 5 or 6 tables out in the sunshine, enjoy people to get outside. You apply in April, maybe you get it by Christmas. So we took it from 8 months to 8 hours. You apply for the permit, the next day you get it. As long as you meet the requirements. Make it easy to do live music, outdoor dining, sidewalk sales, all the kinds of things that show activity and life on the street. You want the food trucks, all those things. You want the fees to be low, easy to get, and easy to enforce. You don't want to make it hard. And then explore the creation of, ultimately down the road, a municipal service district. And this is a way to fund the ongoing downtown organization and revitalization program where the property owners sort of agree to tax themselves a little bit extra to pay for enhanced services like additional sidewalk cleaning, to get out there with the pressure washer and get all the gum off it, maybe to plant flowers, to have flowers hanging from the light poles, Christmas decorations, events, all sorts of different things that different municipal service districts undertake, and that's sort of down the road evolution. And I think that's a summary of where we've been. I want to thank all the downtown stakeholders for their investments, not just in the heart of your town, but their focus. They were overwhelmingly positive about the future of downtown Zebulon. I especially want to thank Dallas Pierce, who let us use his building to meet in for all of our meetings. I want to thank your staff, Michael, Sheila, and Teresa. It's undoubted that they're committed to seeing downtown revitalized. They were very enthusiastic and helpful during the whole process. And lastly, to you, to thank you for your attention to downtown and for your attention today. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I'd be interested to know what the total participation was and where they came from.
So they have the list. I don't have it handy. It was about between 14 and 20. It sort of slid off over time as downtown public meetings typically do. But we had a core group, I'd say, of about a dozen that came every night, mostly property owners and business owners in the downtown. I don't know all the names. I know Dallas was there every night, and he's quite outspoken, so I remember him. But I'm sure they could rattle the names off if you need them.
Well, no, the reason I asked that question, I would expect, and in the past, we've had, groups. In fact, 20 years ago, we redid the sidewalks and the lighting down there, and we had a lot of participation at that time from the merchants.
Yep.
But I'm always interested in the users and what they have to say.
Right.
And what would bring them down, what they would like to see, and I didn't know if you had any of that type of participation.
Not much. I think it was the former category, mostly merchants and property and business owners. And that's why I recommended that you undertake an inclusive master planning process that does exactly what you mentioned, sir, which is focus on users and a broader range of folks from all ethnicities, age groups, everything. I just think this was more of a smaller listening session, and it was a smaller budget, so we didn't have the resources to do that big, broad effort that I think is probably your next step.
I get it. I just was curious if any
Yes, sir.
did participate. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions?
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Okay, and now I'll recognize Teresa Piner, who is our contract for the Downtown Associate Community Program.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the board. It's always great to be back in the town of friendly people. You've always welcomed me, and it's great to be back here at the holiday season. Tonight, we want to take a look at a few items, and we'll be talking about what DAC is, and I want to thank Dan for talking about the downtown sessions, and Mayor, hopefully we'll be able to answer some of your questions, as well as look at why downtowns matter, describe how downtown will play a role in meeting the goals of the 2018 strategic plan. We've heard about that a lot. Sometimes you think about a plan being done and put on a shelf, but I can tell you that your staff has been using that plan to get you to where you are today, and I think it's an exciting time for the town of Zebulon. We'll also look at necessary steps to revitalize, and again, this is a Main Street program, but in your case, it's Arundel Avenue, and how we can develop a positive and a successful downtown associate community. Downtowns matter. Downtown is important because it's the heart and soul of any community. If you don't have a healthy downtown, you simply don't have a healthy town. This is a quote by Ed McMahon. He is the chair of the National Main Street Center Board of Directors. And is this not true for the town of Zebulon? How often have you heard about how vibrant downtown Zebulon used to be? Other communities as well in eastern Wake County. You've often heard, and I've heard it a lot, about the positive comments from last year's holiday tree lighting service, and it was downtown. What made that special? You could have had that in the parking lot of a big box store anywhere, and everybody would have had all the parking they needed. But I think, again, that it would not have been quite the same as it was because it was in your downtown. So why was that special? And then, again, your downtown differentiates you from other towns, any town, USA. You can today with the fast food, our big boxes, and sometimes if you were shut your eyes, you wouldn't know what community you're in. But your downtown Zebulon certainly is different, it's unique, and we need to embrace that. Again, I want to just touch on the strategic plan just a little bit. I think that it's very important leading up and understanding where it is and what it is and where we're going to be going. Vibrant downtown, small town life, and growing smart. The thing of it is the downtown associate community program hits on all three of those elements. And I think that's the reason it's very important that we pay particularly close attention to this plan to make sure that as we go throughout this process with the DAC program that we make sure that we're hitting these focus areas. Tonight's meeting is a continuation of that, and we're talking about the land use plan, we're talking about transportation plan. You've moved the farmer's market to your downtown. The alley, the mini park, has been phenomenal in that it hits on so many elements, not only just bringing life to the downtown, but what it does as well when you're talking about the collaboration that took place between your downtown businesses, your civic groups, town staff, town government to make that happen. And that's exactly what DAC is all about, and building on that, and you're off to a great start. Your new crosswalks that are going in, they're more than just telling you this is a safe place or identifying a place to cross. Those are leading to the heart of your community. They're leading to downtown. They're telling you something special is about to happen. And it's so it shows you that attention has been paid to these areas as you're going to downtown, and make someone say, this is attractive, what's at the other end? The strategic plan builds on solid foundation for the town as a whole. It will take commitment, staffing, and budget, and patience. Often we forget about the patience that it takes. We look at the strategic plan, and when it was started in 17, adopted in 18, and now it's in 2020, to see it through, but you want that strong, solid foundation. I've personally worked on plans for over 10 years before I ever saw anything go vertical. People doubted sometimes what you were doing, but you had a plan, you were organized, you stayed focused, you accepted responsibility for where that was going, and today they are seeing rewards of that. So again, if you've got a good plan, don't give up on it, stay focused. Plans being discussed tonight indicate the strategic plan in action. Downtown revitalization, Main Street, North Carolina Main Street program, the National Main Street program, both were evolved in the 1980s. They talked about downtown revitalization, economic development, downtown preservation. This was a time, developed on a time when families were moving to the suburbs, shopping malls were all the new craze, and we see what's going on with those today. And they were building a downtown. They were building shops that looked like your downtown. This is a time when old, beautiful buildings were being raised in the name of revitalization. We've lost some great buildings, historical buildings, because of urban renewal. And I say this often, and I know this isn't what we call our downtown core, but to me, this is probably the building that we're in right now is one of the prettiest buildings I know of in Wake County. And we don't want to lose that history and that character, and I think that's what you have an opportunity to build upon. There's more than 1,600 communities across the country that are part of the Main Street program. And today there's approximately 85, in North Carolina, 85 Main Street communities, as well as about 8 DAC communities. Zebulon coming on board in January, officially in January, although you've been working on that for a while as well. And DAC was spawned out of that North Carolina program. There's a great movie that I'll see if I can get the manager, I'll send it to him and to send out to you. It was the Main Street movie, and you can see it on YouTube. And Dan, you were talking about parking. That was a big issue in 1980, talking about parking in the downtown and the different perspectives on that. Downtown Association Community, it provides a network of partners and experts across the state, provides extensive technical assistance. You know, even if a community, and especially today's time, you don't have all the money that you need to do everything that is needed, but just say you did. How many times and how many mistakes would we make along the way if we did not use expertise and resources that were out there and already available? That's what DAC brings. It is a state program that is tried and true. It's a national program that's tried and true, and they are there for assistance. I can pick up the phone, I can email, I've got a question, and all of a sudden you'll just get flooded with ways to make that work, or what has not worked, and that sometimes can be more helpful in helping you to save money and prevent a lot of time spent on something that's going to take you down the wrong path. DAC is a 3-year program that partners with the state toward revitalizing main streets throughout North Carolina. Pieces of the puzzle are coming together. You're very fortunate. You've got a great staff to carry out the board's policies here. And I truly believe it, again, it's patience and timing. And with the expertise that you have, when I first began, I wouldn't have thought Parks and Recreation was playing ball. Your Parks and Recreation is more than sports. It is about building a community. It's about economic development. And you've got a lot of great players here on your staff right now that can make this happen and see this through. The board is commended for its vision and continuing to be committed to the downtown. North Carolina Main Street DAC program launched in 2015, again spawned out of the North Carolina Main Street program. It's the first step toward receiving that Main Street designation. And the state works with communities to provide tools to build a sustainable organizational foundation. Again, that foundation, those resources to keep you building on that and to keep that bringing other people in. Mayor, you brought up a very good question a while ago as far as who do you bring into that. This is something that the DAC program will do. It will have committees and groups, and it will bring in more than just the downtown, and so it will be far-reaching. And I'll be glad to talk to anyone about and ideas about who and what groups that I may have missed, that we can get them involved. So we want to make sure we don't forget anybody and that we have everybody involved. DAC was a competitive program, and they only had to take applications every other year. They only accept 3 or 4 at that time, and that's from across the state. So the town of Zebulon did a great job in putting forth that application. Your staff went out, put together, after that application was submitted, put together a video, had the state representatives to come out and did a tour of the downtown. Also, they were very impressed with your legacy businesses. Just to name a few, when you look at Zebulon Drug or Sycamore Crossing, a store that left downtown that came back and then went right next to a chain. Again, the confidence they had, the investment that they made in wanting to be downtown. Devon Hardware, again, being downtown. Whitley Galleries, again, generation after generation, and you've seen what's happened there with the facade and the money they are putting back into that store. So that was very positive. When we took that tour, they met your staff, they found out about their background, and they saw your businesses investing that had been here a while, and they weren't dying, they were building. And addition, then you've got other businesses coming into the area that are also making investments. Without that tour and with the competition as it was, I'm not sure that Zebulon would have been able to make it in the program. But your businesses and your staff is what made the difference, went on that cutting edge right there. And so again, I think that it's very important that you're where you are today. I want to hit just a little bit on the 4-point program. This is really what DAC is about. It's talking about economic vitality, design, promotion, and organization. The organization, it'll build leadership. They want a strong organizational foundation, and they want it to be wide-ranging. They want it to be diverse. They want broad community engagement to make sure that organization foundation is strong. Economic vitality. Again, downtown, they want to see diverse businesses there so that when or if, as we've seen with COVID and economic changes, we want to make sure that if one type of business fails, you've got another strong business there to take its place and to keep bringing people downtown. One of the things too is you want to make sure that you just don't want to do what they're doing next door or down the street or in Cary, not because you don't like them, they're doing a great job and you want to learn from them. But you're very unique. A town usually, Zebulon size is often a bedroom community. One of the things when you look at the traffic flows and the patterns on a daily basis, you'll see that more traffic comes into Zebulon during the workday than leaves. So that tells you you have a larger population during work hours than most other of your surrounding communities. So what you want to do is build upon that. Look at what you have downtown. That tells me you need places for lunch. Again, looking at the bedroom community and looking how you're different from that. Again, capitalize on your assets and make sure we do a lot of digging to find out what's out there. And again, promotion. We've got to tell our story. We've got to make sure people understand it. Who knows better than you? Design, we've got to look at the downtown. Again, I think that Dan brought up some very good points in looking at some of the sketches that were done and how they were changing. I think it's very important that we look at that also. But today, when businesses look at coming to talk to you, they've already read your minutes. They've already looked at your board meetings. They've already been online. They've already visited your town before they ever make that first call. So are we making a good impression? What is it that we can do that can draw these businesses into Zebulon? This is up here more for reference than it is anything. This is North Carolina, small town Main Street, and it's from 04 to 19. The reason I put it there, and I can always get you more detailed information, is it tells us that there's more private investment than there were public investment over that period of time. Also, it talks a little bit about the business gain as well as additional full-time and part-time employees. So again, you see the increase, and what we do and what I'm doing right now is working on a downtown baseline. So I'm looking at your businesses, and we're getting that baseline, and every year to keep us true to what we say that plan of work is going to be, we've got to do a report. So that's going to be a report that we're going to have as a baseline so that you, each year, can get that information of how many new businesses, where are you, how many new employees, what was the investment of the town, what grants were received, and then look at how the businesses and downtowns have improved as far as tax base. So this will be our measure, and the reason we're doing that downtown inventory right now. The community responsibility. I just want to let you know a little bit about, we're going to have to participate. We can't just say we got into the program and that the state's going to lead these meetings. We have to participate in the conferences, the meetings, the workshops. We're required to do so. We have to maintain membership not only in North Carolina Main Street program, but the National Main Street program. Commit a minimum of 20 hours per week to downtown development so that you've got staff, whether in-house or somewhere else, that is committed to looking at the downtown needs. The DAC calendar, again, May of 19 is when it was applied for. Notice of acceptance was in the fall of 19. DAC acceptance date is January 1st. The kickoff meeting, we'll be getting information out. I want to get that out this week. Will be January 6th. It's either going to be at 8. It's going to be, of course, a virtual meeting, but either 8:30 or 9 o'clock. And we want to, again, reach a broad base for that as well. We want to establish these responsibilities and have a strong public-private partnership, establish an annual plan of work, because otherwise we know, as like anything, that people are going to, things are going to come up throughout the year. We have to have a plan of work. We stay focused so we can stay on point, and then again, we can report to you at the end of the year. And you want to adopt and exhibit downtown core preservation ethic with the buildings that we have. Let me see. Again, the downtown meetings, Dan just talked about those. We had that completed. What's so great about that is this now, these are going to lead, we just finished those up in December, we're going to go into the kickoff of the meeting in January the 6th. We're going to be having monthly meetings with the state. Right now, everything's planned to be virtual, once a month. And again, we want to get a broad base of people that are participating in this. Dan also mentioned a visioning session. DAC will and the state will help us with a visioning session. We're going to look at that. If we can have one in person with everybody together, we'd like to do that. So we may have to push that toward later spring or later in the year than we would want to, but we can do it virtually if that's where it comes. But this is a great transition. We're going to take that information Dan had, all that. We're going to take it over to DAC, and we're going to build upon that information, making sure we can get it into the plan of work so it's not lost. I've heard that more times when people say, I've told them how I feel. I want people to know how we feel. We've had a meeting on that, and they don't know that we listened. Well, it's going to be rolled over into this plan. So we will listen, and we're going to be reporting on it. Again, priorities are going to be identified. Plan of work will be set. You're going to have your SWOT analysis where you look at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats to the downtown, and that annual report to the state as well as you on the progress. The next steps, we're going to notify community of the kickoff meeting, again, hopefully, and the monthly meetings, hopefully, again, that first little notice will go out this week. Establish process to include diverse cross-section of participants. Again, Mayor, I think you hit that. We've got to do that for this to be successful. Otherwise, it won't be. Establish an advisory board to monitor the plan of work. Looking at that probably taking place close to the end of the fiscal year. And establish a platform for measuring and reporting the program's progress. So Sorry, I'm a little long. I'm excited of where you're going. I'm excited of where you've been and the enthusiasm of your businesses and what they're doing downtown, of your staff. And I think the timing's right. All those pieces of that puzzle are coming together. Thank you.
Questions? Thank you, Teresa.
Have a great day. Thank you very much.
Okay, to wrap up this first part, you've heard already tonight about that we've sought out information from the business owners and the property owners, primarily in downtown. We're able to get feedback, really introducing those ideas and suggestions into the DAC program and how those components will be coordinated. The next step in this process is what I call carrots and sticks, or incentives and regulations. The town does have other tools outside of these programs and these incentives to really help work with the property owners that want to work cooperatively with us, also to change the expectations of what downtown businesses and buildings can look like. With this, code enforcement, in January, early February, you'll see a series of regulations that'll be coming before you. Primarily, these will be related to building code regulations, as well as window display requirements specifically for vacant buildings. As part of the budget process, you'll see a series of grant and incentive modifications coming forward. A continuation of the facade improvement grant, which has been fairly successful thus far. An expansion of the streetscape grant program, and I'll get into those details. And then we're going to shift gears as well. There was a phrase that Dan mentioned called BUG, and it goes well with the carrots and sticks, I suppose. A business upfit grant for the infrastructure component. So I'm going to do what planners do and steal the best ideas from those who have been successful with them, as well as talk about some future possibilities. To start out, though, it's a good idea to understand where we're at right now. These are the current conditions in downtown. These are 3 examples of buildings at various stages of either renovation or underutilization, or just waiting for a potential occupant to come along. We have some that have undergone some modifications, such as the boarding up of windows, removal of decorative elements, the bottom of the facade for the building at Horton and Arundel is an example, as well as the putting up paper on the inside of the windows. In both of these cases, they're not very inviting or indicative of a vibrant downtown. And then we have some situations like this where the buildings are actually falling into disrepair and decay. As an example, we have broken windows, damaged and tattered awnings, as well as brickwork that needs some substantial repair. Not only is it requiring repointing, but also restabilization of some of this brickwork. So the regulations that are going to be coming before you as part of a code enforcement package will require these windows be repaired, and they'll be called out specifically for the downtown core and the downtown periphery districts. Repair and clean damaged or dirty awnings, as well as repair and repoint damaged bricks. You'll see these little components can have pretty substantial visual impacts on our downtown. The other facet of this is something that a couple of communities within North Carolina have already started doing. Wake Forest, as an example, is currently investigating this and how to best introduce this. It would prohibit window coverings in or over windows and require displays within vacant buildings within their storefronts. This is kind of what it could look like. It doesn't need to be some grandiose display that you would see in New York. It can be as simple as pegboards with shelving for students to display art, or even murals being painted over boards on the insides of the building to create some sort of visual attraction. It can be something as simple as seasonal window displays. We have elements of this right now with businesses painting the windows as part of an art competition for a seasonal display. And Dallas Pierce was mentioned earlier. The building that we met in was the former Barham's restaurant. And Dallas took it upon himself to put in displays in that front window. And it's amazing how little elements like that can greatly change the perception of what you think of downtown and really help to create a vibrant feel, even if it's in those isolated locations. It can also be working with organizations regarding current topics. We're also going to be talking about incentives as part of the budget process, one of which has been a fairly successful project. The Facade Improvement Grant has successfully given grants out to 6 businesses in downtown. There's 3 that are currently in operation. One will probably be receiving their funds here very shortly once they open. 2 others will be looking like March. And then we have 2 additional building owners that have already expressed interest, and they're kind of racing to see who's going to try to get that last grant for this fiscal year, if not possibly carry over into the next year. These are primarily for the exterior visual elements. The windows, doors, painting the building, visual repairs to the exterior. They don't go past the windows or the interior, though. The one that's about to receive it is actually using it for his signage that was being put up for the Old Raleigh Distillery. As an example of a very successful project is the intersection of Arundel and Vance. This picture is from Google Maps or Google Street View, and it wasn't taken all that long ago. Neither of these buildings are very inviting in this context, but through the Facade Improvement Grant, it created a public-private partnership where the private business owners were willing to invest substantial amounts of money, while the town was able to provide a small contribution towards the improvements of these structures. And this is what it looks like today, well, before the mural was painted anyways. It is a significant difference, and the improvements far exceeded the amount or even the contribution that the town provided. These are just 2 of the 6 examples. We have others such as Muter Construction that also provided or included substantial modifications to a building where the funds far exceeded the 50% match requirement. We're also going to be looking at modifying the Streetscape Grant Program. We do currently have a program. It's limited to $2,000 per project, and it's limited to non-for-profit organizations. And right now, it requires them to come before you in order to seek out these funds. The town is proposing to modify this process to open it up to both businesses and non-for-profits and allow for a $4,000 maximum. A lot of these streetscape details are very expensive. Planters, benches, other visual elements that are out on the sidewalk, primarily within the public right-of-way, they can become cost prohibitive. This program would allow for a lot more to go into the right-of-way in terms of enhancing the visual connotation and improving the vibrancy. The other modification is it would require staff approval, specifically as drafted, come from the Economic Development Committee, which is currently made up of myself, Sheila Long from our Parks and Recreation Department, Teresa Piner, our DAT coordinator, and a representative from the Chamber of Commerce. Finally, a new grant that we're going to be proposing was actually something that was mentioned last year. It was previously called the Infrastructure Improvement Grant, but I like the term bug better, and I think it better illustrates what we're trying to do. This would be for the infrastructure components, as well as the interior modifications. It would include electric, HVAC, plumbing, ADA accessibility. All of these tend to be very big ticket items for the property owners, and in some situations, they can be cost prohibitive. We're not going to be trying to completely reinvent the wheel. It's going to be based similar to how the existing economic incentive program, which the board approved some years ago, It's going to have similar parameters, but whereas instead of the employment numbers being really brought into calculation, it's going to be what is the impact on the community in terms of tangible tax incentive or tax dollars and the amount of investment that they're willing to put in. Finally, the other incentives, which we're going to be proposing at some point in the future, would include expedited review district. As Dan mentioned earlier, one of the concerns with a lot of business owners is, okay, time is money, and how long is it going to take to get some of these approvals taken? We do have some control over that, and we have, unfortunately, some of it is out of our hands, given our contractual partners with this, with Wake County Building Inspection. We have taken some steps in terms of our zoning compliance process, especially for businesses where they're just going into an existing structure and they're not requiring any upfits. So we're able to shorten some of those processes. But over time, we're going to be looking to revise some things to really put an expedited review process into place. We're also going to, depending upon how things work out with the historic district, put in parameters for historic district specifically for downtown, so that contributing resources and buildings might be able to achieve these some of these tax credits. It's not going to be a universal for everybody just because of the way that the historic preservation program is structured, but there are potential incentives for buildings, specifically the ones that retain a lot of their historic character within the downtown. It also establishes design guidelines, not only on how those buildings are renovated, but also for the infill development to make sure that building design can be compatible with the other buildings within that particular district. Finally, at some point, we're going to explore a municipal service district. During the downtown discussions, we heard from a couple business owners, actually several business owners, that indicated that this would be something that they'd be willing to entertain, knowing that those funds will be going to enhance the downtown, and which then helps bring folks in and helps their bottom line as business owners. The funds that would be collected would be specific for the improvements within that district. And to close up, I love this quote. It's from the 6 Pillars of Civic Pride. It notes that no one should have to travel to visit beautiful places. We must invest in making our own towns livable and lovable. And with that, I am available if you have any questions, as well as Dan is still here if you have any questions regarding the discussions earlier.
No questions? I will have a ton of questions on incentives,
I'm sure you will.
but now's not the time for it.
Okay.
And it's not that I'm against incentives. I'm very concerned about how we achieve them or do them.
We'll shift gears here. I believe our land use consultants should be on our way up. Because of COVID, we're shuffling folks around. So let me go grab them. Okay, for part 2 tonight, we have put this down. Part 2 tonight, the town has worked with Remy Kemp and Associates and Ken Keys to complete essentially what is part 1 of our land use comprehensive plan, as well as our transportation plan rewrites. This is primarily a lot of focus on gathering information, understanding what are the needs of the communities, so we can get a good foundation of where we're at before we determine what needs to take place to achieve where we want to go. So with this, I'll turn it over to Gary Mitchell, and it might as well be a Monday. Jessica McClure from Remy Kemp, and they'll take over.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Good to see you again. Y'all are troopers. You are getting a lot of information tonight. I say that just to alert you that you're about to get more. We have a fair amount to share with you on the land use plan, transportation plan. First from myself, Gary Mitchell once again, and then Jessica on transportation. but we're making up for some lost time. You may remember that we started this process in February, and we know what happened in March. So it was difficult to do a lot of public activities these recent 6 months or so, but I'll tell you more about our timeline and how that has gone. But the other part of this is there's probably not a lot that will surprise you in this next half hour or so, but it confirms by speaking to, as you said, Mayor, some of the users and others in the community that they're saying the same things, the same priorities, same themes. So I wanted to share that with you. But as far as our objectives tonight, I want to tell you where we are in the process, but especially what we've heard from your local folks, from the leadership, public and private, what we found from our own background work and data work, and then where we go from here. So as far as timeline, this goes kind of clockwise, but we started out, as I say, in February, and it was to focus on where you are today as a community, Zebulon today, and then based on that, what's the direction, the focus for the plan moving forward into the Zebulon Tomorrow phase, and then wrapping up with the roadmap, which is getting down to business, your action plan. And so working with Michael, and after the hiatus of recent months with COVID, we're back on track. We're going to work toward the May-June timeframe to do a joint hearing on the draft plans, make sure they're ready to go forward, and potentially adopt in June. So that's our new timeline now that we are rolling again. Some of you may remember, I know some of you were able to attend a town hall meeting that we did on the north side back in the days when we used to do those kind of meetings. But we had to shift gears. Mike had an online survey open on the website that's got another source of input. But when we got to the summer time frame, we said, I will come here for a week and spend a week in Zebulon and line up as many small group sessions, groups of 10 as you can. We did 12 of those sessions back in late September and early October. I know every one of you were able to attend. You will see some of your comments here tonight from that. But as you said, Mayor, there were users in those groups, people who come downtown not as owners, but just to enjoy the atmosphere. So they mentioned, you name it, restaurants, shopping, entertainment, just a place to hang out, whether that's a park, a public space, all those things we've talked about. So we heard that, and certainly talking with your departments as well. So what I'm going to do is go through each of the kind of the pieces of the land use plan and tell you some of the things we heard that stood out to us. We have a good 20 pages or so of takeaways from all these discussions of recent months, hit some of the highlights, and then some quotes from that as well. Certainly, people talked about all the growth, but how the population in Zebulon, of course, is diversifying in terms of age, just mix of folks, where they come from. It's a different situation today. And especially in talking to some of your developer home builders, that many of these folks moving into the new homes are newcomers. They're not just people relocating in town. So many new people in your community, which some people said means changing needs, expectations of their community and of the town, of course. And some folks just talked about kind of that idea of a unified community. As you spread out, as you add more people, that you still find ways to maintain a unified community that everyone is proud of. We're not going to put a lot of numbers in front of you tonight, but I did want to hit on the demographics, some of these key numbers. If you go back to 2010, you've added about a third of your population just over these 10 years. Of course, we're waiting for a new census. It's that time of the decade. But these estimates from the Census Bureau and others are already a year old. But it said that you were approaching the 6,000 point last year. Mike gave us some fresh numbers. This is as of last Friday. If you go back to the beginning of your fiscal year, July 1, there's been 163 certificates of occupancy issued for new homes. People moved in. And if you figure about 3 people per home, that's about almost 500 new residents just since July. Now, you know some of the other numbers. There's roughly 3,000 homes still in the pipeline, already approved and ready to be built as that comes online. So there's a lot of activity that's bringing those newcomers to your community. Another number here is if you go back to 2010, the population that was under age 18 was about 28% of the population. Now it's 34%. You are getting younger as a community, and median age is another way to look at that. In 2010, the median age was 35. It's now 32, or a few years ago, the latest estimate. Most places that we work around the country, that median age number is going up. It's the baby boom generation retiring, aging population in a lot of places. Your population is getting younger with all these newcomers. That has implications across the board, the types of parks and events that you do, certainly your school system. The final number there is household size. In 2010, it was 2.6. Now it's roughly 3. And just that little change in decimal places means a big deal, because if you spread that number across many new homes, and even if you weren't building a lot of new homes, there's more people in each of those units. So that's why the population is starting to take off. So here's a quote that we heard when we were talking to people about just population demographics. Somebody mentioned that we're still a small town relative to others, but I don't necessarily know everyone anymore, and that's the challenge, is integrating all those new folks and still having that sense of small town and community. On land use and development, no surprises, the pace of growth, somebody mentioned, but there is room to grow in various directions around the town. One person made the observation that think about our corridors, our transportation corridors and our natural corridors, creeks, our greenways that are building in the town now. That's what we need to build around as we think about the future. Certainly, we're linking land use and transportation just by doing these two plans together, but making sure those are connected. The whole theme of blending the new with what's here, some people put that in terms of history. Other people, as mentioned earlier, rural atmosphere in some cases, and now urbanizing, suburbanizing. Anytime you talk about land use, certainly densities come up. What's the appropriate densities of housing and mix of different housing types and densities? And that final point, certainly wanting to see the private sector helping with the cost of growth as development occurs. So I know it's tough to see this up on the screen. This will be in our reports, but just a series of aerials. If we go back to March 1998 and look at the landscape then, and some things that stood out to me looking at these images is, of course, Pippin Road, Old Bun, what's happened there. But if you skip forward 10 years, on the east side of town, the Braemar subdivision is just starting to show up. Wakeland Elementary was built. U.S. Foods pops up on the east side. So there's things that were happening even 10 years ago. Fast forward to now, and these aerials are a year old, but you really see the development pattern up on the north side, all the subdivision activity up there. So a couple of the quotes that we had here, we didn't really hear too many comments about, I don't want to see growth, I don't want to see Zebulon grow. Didn't really hear that too much. People had some concerns about traffic, of course, things like that, but we heard these kind of comments. If we're going to grow, let's do it right. Let's plan it well. So we're doing all the right things. And interesting quote, as we grow, make sure we bring all the pieces along, whether that's schools, parks, shopping, as we grow. Infrastructure and public services. You're in that situation like a lot of communities of all those pipes in the ground from many decades that have to be maintained, but also the new infrastructure. So that challenge, you have to have the financial capacity to take care of both of those, which gets into tax base. Your residents, like many places, put a lot of value on police and fire, your public safety services. And then there was a comment about, Zebulon over the years has done a good job of providing public services, so we have to maintain that standard as we grow. Now, this is a map. We mapped out your annexation history over the last 10, 15 years, and so those outer colored areas just shows what's been happening in recent years. So this is another example that will be in our Zebulon Today report. And don't want to skip over this slide. Most of this presentation, as I said, is about where you are today. This is the one slide where I'm going to jump ahead to the future because we know it's an issue that either is coming to the front burner or is here soon. On the left is a map that the fire department generates of their response time. They have the 4-minute response time target. And the purple on that map on the left shows that right now with the downtown station, they're able to respond more on the south and central part of the city, not as much on the north side. The map on the right is from the fire facility plan that was done a couple of years ago in 2018, and it shows if a fire station was more centrally located, you would have that better coverage of the entire town. So that's a challenge in front of the city right now. The town is, the downtown station is not the best location going forward with all the north side growth, but I wouldn't want to see it if it does shift too far north, because the long range is the south side is going to grow someday as well. So a good central location for that facility. We'll talk about that more in the future part of the plan. Just some quick numbers, and some of this was from talking to staff, of course, with the Raleigh merger agreement now being under 2 years, hopefully, toward paying that off, or even sooner. But we had a number from staff that if and when that happens, that on average, the resident water bill would come down $70, a big difference for folks. And then that other number, the Insurance Services Office rating that we look at for all fire departments on a scale of 1 to 10, where you want to be as low as you can be. Zebulon is at a 3 right now. That is a very nice rating for a city of this size. And Chris mentioned that the next evaluation is next year, so another chance to revisit that. So these are the types of numbers that we're going to call out in the report on where you are today, but here's a couple of the quotes on the growth and infrastructure topic. Again, it's that theme of getting ahead, making sure you're doing good planning, and again, that theme of the newcomers, and that was a quote from somebody just talking about needing to engage some of these new constituents as we think about service provision. Let me move on to housing. One of the quotes here was, certainly we're getting the quantity of housing, new homes. We want to see quality as well. So many people talked about variety, and that's variety of design, size, different stages of life, price points, that you're covering the marketplace of what people need. We talked about not just having starter homes, but being able to mix housing, and whether it's the Sydney Creek development that's coming along now or some others where they're mixing housing types, that's the type of model we're looking for. Some folks mentioned more market rate multifamily development is a need. We did hear, of course, from the development community about be careful as a town when you add to the cost of development, whether it's fees or things like that, process, if you're trying to maintain affordability. One thing that's great in Zebulon is that you are seeing renovation, reinvestment in older homes, and especially right around downtown. We don't see that in every community, and you start to see those neighborhoods go downhill over time. And then just that great theme of let's not just build a bunch of subdivisions, let's build community. And we'll elaborate on that as we go. So as I mentioned, 3,000 homes in the pipeline already, with more being reviewed as we speak by Mike's department. This map, hard to see once again on the screen, but it's a map of all the parcels, the property that's out there in your town limits and around the town in the ETJ. The red spaces are public properties. That's something we always want to be aware of where there's public ownership of property. But zooming in a little more, what this map starts to show is there's where you can see pockets of yellow dense, that's the subdivisions. That's the smaller lots that have been laid out for housing development. It's those green pieces in between that are still out there that in some cases are family ownerships or pieces that just haven't been subdivided yet. That's where your growth is potentially going to continue on the north side, is filling in those pockets, and that's the way you'd like to see it grow as you're investing in infrastructure and response time of public services and your road system. I'll come back to this on a later slide, some of the implications there, but this was another comment on the left from development community folks was, there's housing being built all around this region, but what Zebulon has right now is a bit cheaper land. That's changing as you grow, but that's one of the key advantages, and just the opportunity to build a fair amount of decent, affordable housing relative to other parts of the region. All right, I think the mayor and several others mentioned this on economy and jobs, but just the history of Zebulon being more of a place that generated a lot of employment in the past. Now you're seeing that residential wave coming on, as was mentioned in the earlier presentation. Just the amount of daytime population activity that you see in Zebulon, that's great for the local economy. I have the question mark on whether it's a good place for business startups, because we kind of heard both sides of that discussion, whether it's just getting through permitting, finding a space that you can start a business and do it within financial means. So we'll explore that more in this part of the plan. That idea of not just relying on one or a few major employers, but having a lot of sources of jobs locally as you grow. There was a lot of discussion about what a great location you have economically, and certainly that idea of being the last front in eastern Wake County. People talked about the need for medical as you grow, not having to go elsewhere for that, and certainly hotel needs. I can tell you as a visiting consultant that it'd be nice to stay right here in town, not next door in Knightdale, as I do. And certainly we knew this coming in, capitalizing more on the 5-county stadium asset that you have. So this is another tough one to see, but what's on this map is Zebulon in the middle, and people talked about all the destinations that they go to, whether it's for jobs in their business activities. So on the left, or on the right, excuse me, to the east, of course, is Rocky Mountain Wilson, or even farther, people that have business there, or people mentioned if I have a spouse that goes that direction for work and I'm going to downtown Raleigh, or I'm working here in Zebulon. Of course, there's all the other destinations, downtown Raleigh, Research Triangle, Wake Forest, all those directions to your west. So people really emphasize what a great location you're in the middle of all these things. A couple of quotes on economic development, just it's an evolving strategy for Zebulon as a town. And there's one of those first references, we always hear these in these kind of conversations, who we don't want to be. We don't want to be Knightdale was one person's comment, but that theme of being a destination as came up in the downtown discussion. So on downtown specifically, we are coming at this, of course, from the big picture, citywide level of where does this fit in. We work with some communities, and the feedback we get is downtown's been getting too much attention, too much resources. We need to focus on other things. That's not the theme here. There's so much interest in downtown and making that your focal point for the entire community. So some people said things are getting better all the time. Some people said, but even faster. We want to see things happen. The pros and cons of the traffic count is the issue that you have some business owners downtown who said, that's why I came here, because there's 7,500 vehicles going through Main Street every day, Arundel. But others, of course, talked about the truck traffic, that's the flip side of it. So pros and cons of having an active downtown. Certainly the challenges of building in older buildings. So there's a lot of the same themes you heard earlier. I won't repeat these from the parking or the downtown discussion, parking, but I'll especially reinforce the earlier point that your town manager and Dan mentioned. So many places we work, there's a strong Main Street, but all around it, it has really fallen off the cliff. The neighborhoods are not what they used to be. You have such a better situation to have those good neighborhoods around that core downtown, a very good situation to be in. So a couple of the quotes on downtown, and we heard this in a lot of ways about Zebulon was charm and character. Don't update everything, don't modernize this whole town, but that idea once again of having a gathering place, especially as the north side is more of a suburban atmosphere, having that urban downtown to come to. Recreation and amenities. We talked about the newcomers, and you know, some folks talked about their recreation expectations, whether that's trails and greenways or different types of sports. As I mentioned to the mayor earlier, just amenities in general. People talked about cultural activities, shopping, restaurants. You know, people want to not have to leave your community to do those types of things. Some people talked about focusing on families and kids, things for them to do especially. Green and blue ways, your greenways plus your creeks and water recreation opportunities. The Parks and Master Plan update is happening as well, focusing on that. Some people mentioned as we grow, don't forget about our natural resources, whether that's forested areas, the creeks once again, that theme of places to gather. Commissioner Laux, this is your point. I remember this well. You said we've got to welcome these newcomers and connect them and educate them that there are things to do here, and here's where you can plug in and be active in this community. And certainly, once again, with 5-county stadium, one discussion was think about things we could do on that site that aren't in the area. And indoor recreation was one thing that was mentioned. There's the community center. It's not the largest space. Is there an opportunity at 5-county to have other types of indoor recreation, whether that's indoor soccer, volleyball, things like that, or an event space, a meeting space, hotel opportunity out that direction? So we can approach that from the recreation aspect as well as economic development. This map, I mentioned those corridors to build around. This map in the white lines is all your transportation system. The green is your creeks, your waterways, and the floodplain around them, or the greenways that are associated with those. That's what shapes your town. There's the two major north-south features, of course, on either side of Zebulon, but within the town, it's more the east-west pattern, and that's what really shapes where development can happen, away from floodplains. But topography, if you think on either side of those green lines or a creek, there's a watershed break, there's a ridge line, and your utilities folk can only move water a certain direction. So that's the opportunity with the Raleigh being more active in utilities, is to open up more of the north side for development, eventually the south for development. But this map right here is a big part of the future part of the plan, the land use plan, of where development can happen and what those key intersections are for commercial development possibilities. So let's see, I believe that quote on the left was Commissioner Baxter's. In one of our first sessions, it was that idea of being a lifestyle community, not a bedroom community, or not just a bedroom community, and bringing some of that money and time, people's time, spend it here, don't go elsewhere. And then somebody mentioned, just let's not just build a bunch of houses. Once again, let's build a community, a special community. So a final round of quotes. Again, no surprises, that there's an authenticity here. There's that small town character. There's another comparison. Let's not be another Cary as we grow. And then people that talked about the urban plus rural, just having the best of both worlds and certainly being sustainable over time. So we've put a lot of information in front of you. We tried to boil it down to 10 priorities, and as I go through these, I'd like you to think about, is this on target? Does it resonate for Zebulon? And is there anything missing from this list? These aren't in a priority order. We just picked 10 items, but the first one I have there, which we are doing by doing these plans together, is making sure that land use and transportation are working together. And just with all those items I went through, there's so many connections to transportation, whether you're trying to get people to a park, to downtown, move them through town if it's truck traffic. There's so many things that tie back to transportation. And then the land use plan certainly drives how the transportation plan has to accommodate the traffic implications of all that growth and development. So that's the starting point as a plan priority. The other one is we work in plenty of places where the textbook thing is you do a plan and then you do your development regulations. There was good reason here to do that Unified Development Ordinance last year and get that adopted. So now we're kind of circling back and making sure the plan syncs with those regulations. What's great about the UDO is there's terrific purpose statements in that UDO about why we're regulating land development. And that's what we need to make the connection to with the land use plan. The third one there is connect to the third power, and what we mean by that is connect, connect, connect. We heard this over and over, whether it's connecting people to each other, connecting people to parks, getting downtown, being a connected community. So that's a theme for everything we do in this plan. Number 4 gets back to the infrastructure aspects and public services, that there's a definite need for growth management, certainly in the coming decades, and making sure we tie that to adequacy of public facilities. Number 5 goes back to that theme of that we started out as a strong jobs town. Make sure that we continue to build on that and be resilient in terms of those multiple job sources, that we have a good base of economic activity that also generates the tax base. A 6th item, Zebulon has done a lot in recent years through partnerships, whether that's with other government levels, county, state, and now federal in some cases with grants, public and private. Continue to build on that. That's going to be so important as you grow, because there's only so many things you can do on your own. What we mean by the steer to the downtown momentum is, as you heard earlier tonight, there's so much good going on downtown. From the comprehensive plan perspective, it's connect to everything else that's going on citywide, and that you're steering downtown to support your overall success as a community. Number 8, protect and reinforce character. We will expand on that in many ways. It can be the rural character, it can be that downtown, small town character, a gathering place. the character of your neighborhoods. As we said, not just building a subdivision, but building a true neighborhood. Number 9, once again, goes back to Commissioner Lau's comment about community and being one community, pride in community. And that 10th item is thinking big. There's some big things in the decades ahead that you can do on all these fronts in terms of recreation, your infrastructure, housing, but think about all the ways you can share costs that you don't take this on yourself, of course. So those are the 10 items that kind of rose to the top for us from everything we've heard over these recent months. So let me go back to the previous slide first. Is there anything on that list that you might have a question about or a concern? And then the other part, of course, anything you don't see on this list of 10 that strikes you as big items for the town to focus on?
It's a lot to take in.
Sorry, Mayor?
That is a lot to take in.
Absolutely.
So probably have to think on that some.
Yes, and I understand you have a copy of the slides. This is an ongoing process, as we mentioned, through June. But yes, we are turning the corner through this discussion tonight from here's where you are today to where we go with the future part of the plan. I was going to use the analogy of 10 Christmas trees here. We can hang even more ornaments on these trees. There's a lot that can go under these bigger themes. And as I said, connecting dots, we need to make the connections how infrastructure means everything for where schools are built ultimately, how your parks and recreation system builds out. All these pieces need to connect and that you're building community, as we say.
Well, generally, development request is what drove infrastructure expansion. And I think that's probably still going to be true to a greater extent. Because, well, take Weaver's Pond, for example. They put in the extension of water and sewer lines into that, but it also brought the school that's up there. Because that original developer gave the Wake County school system a good deal and said, I'll bring infrastructure to you. But my whole point is that most of the times in the past, it's been that the desire to develop by the developer caused the infrastructure and was paid for by the developer. And then you just expand and grow from there. And of course, we deal now under Raleigh's rules on those.
And I think part of what's coming with the Raleigh relationship is some game-changing infrastructure investments that's going to open up more of the north side. But Mike can tell you, when I first got involved here, it just struck me the amount of open land that is so close to downtown on the south side, but lack of utilities.
Right.
That will change over time, and it's reflected in your UDO that area is zoned as downtown periphery, because in the future, that could really support and tie in a residential base that's within walking distance of community park, community center, and downtown. So many assets right there.
Yeah, typically the southwest is the harder to develop than the southeast. But that's just the way it is. But it'll get there.
Well, you nailed it. We warned you. We were going to put a lot of information in front of you, but the final thing I was going to put up there was, as part of thinking big, the map on the left, yellow is the town limits. There's kind of a beige area around it. That's the ETJ. And the pink area is the overall planning area that Michael put in front of us. That planning area extends well north of the town, and it's really, in coordination with Rolesville and Wendell, it's kind of your area of influence. It's understood to be where you're going to grow and really probably have more control of how that plays out. So as part of thinking big, as we turn to the future part of the plan, there's a lot more out there, a lot more territory to think about, and it involves those north and south areas where these new infrastructure investments are going to happen. But as we said earlier, there's topography challenges out there. It's where your creeks cut across the area east-west. So we have to make all those connections of where development can happen. And as I hand off to Jessica with the transportation plan, you know, as you think of the areas north of town, what are those key intersections where a grocery store someday is going to pop up, where some commercial activity, you know, Dallas has talked about office activity on the north side potentially at some point. That's what we have to think about in the land use plan. Is it's easy to put all those big areas of yellow subdivisions, but where do the key corners and intersections happen over time and happen well? One challenge, of course, legacy, is all those interesting angle intersections that you have on the north side that are being dealt with now, but we have to think about that. So let me hand off to Jessica and let's
Well, let me
shift-
add one more
Yes, sir.
thing, if
Yes,
I
sir.
may. I think we have a lot more development capability than what's showing in the pink. If you go to the west, we go almost to Lizard Lick. And that's if you go on 97. If you go on 64 Business, we go all the way down to the river. If you are looking at the county lines, I think that eventually, I won't be sitting in this seat, obviously, but eventually, we're going to go across the county lines, just like Cary has done, and I think Marshville's actually crossed a little bit, maybe. I'm not sure about that. But my point is that we have more development capability when we cross those county lines, and I think we will at some point. I really do.
And one thing we talked about at the staff level when we started this process was people that live out that direction now associate with Zebulon.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah, you run into them in Asheville and ask them where they live, they'll tell you it's Zebulon. It's just the way it is. But that's the postal service that helps define that.
right.
But nonetheless, I think that eventually, we actually have a piece of land in Johnston County right now, down below U.S. Foods. It'll not be developed residentially, it'll be because U.S. Foods owns it. But the point is that we've crossed the line.
Right. All right, I need to shift gears to the transportation plan, but I'll still be here for discussion later. Thank you.
All right, let's keep the good times rolling here. As Gary said, I'm Jessica McClure with Ramey Kemp Associates, and we are working on the comprehensive transportation plan that goes hand in hand with the land use plan. So we're gonna kind of skip some gears here and get talking about some roadways and some other aspects. So I'm just gonna jump right into it. And during those sessions, public input, what have we heard about traffic? There's an increase in traffic not only on the freeways, 264, 64, but across town in general. There just seems to be more traffic everywhere. So much so, somebody had mentioned that it's not necessarily a rush, 1 or 2 hours, it's a rush afternoon on a Friday afternoon coming down Arundel. It's here. Again, the traffic volume on Arundel through downtown has its pros and its cons, but people noticed that it was a lot of traffic, specifically the truck traffic going through downtown. Latest DOT counts from 2018, 2019 have truck traffic at about 8% going downtown. That's getting up to highway standards. 64 has 8 to 12% trucks. So there's a good amount of trucks coming down that roadway, which inspires discussions for a truck bypass or a different route designation to help clear those trucks out that are just hauling through to really help slow down the downtown area a little bit more. What do we hear about multimodal uses? A lot of folks were really interested and supportive of closing the gaps in the sidewalk network and expanding that network. Also, we talked a little bit earlier about the crosswalks, emphasizing the crosswalks. We heard some comments that drivers aren't really looking for pedestrians or expecting them. And if we had crosswalks that were more emphasized, then it would be a visual indicator that, people might be crossing the intersection here or mid-block. So really kind of bring attention to that to increase the safety. Bike lanes and multi-use trails and greenways. Folks were not necessarily very comfortable biking on the existing roadways with the traffic that's out there. Again, downtown with the trucks, that's That's a risky move. So just kind of creating facilities that are less stressful on the biker, whether that's off-road with the greenways or on-road, by providing a little extra pavement for the bike lanes. With that, the bridges over 264 and 64, again, those are the north-south crosses there. There's not that many, so we need to make sure we maximize those and get as many users, various users of the transportation system accommodated on those so they can feel safe walking across. They can live north and walk all the way downtown to have dinner, to go have a drink, to do some shopping, and then walk home and not have to feel like they're taking their life in their hands or that it might be uncomfortable at some point. What else did we hear in general? There were a lot of concerns about safety, both roadway segments and intersections. NC 96, Arundel from 64 north to Pierce's Road was a big topic of discussion as far as the lack of access management. There's basically full movement everywhere. Everybody, you can take left turns. There's a lot to look at when you're trying to maneuver out there. And doing something to kind of help reduce those conflict points. Also, Shepherd School Road at Old Bun came up a whole bunch. A lot of development going out on Old Bun, a lot of traffic increases. The intersection's skewed, it's got some visibility issues. Just things like that in certain areas around town. Additionally, pavement condition and future maintenance. With all the development that's coming in, these roadways are being put in by the developer. DOT's taking them over for maintenance, but they're all gonna come up at about the same time for repaving, essentially. 15 to 20 years out, we're now gonna have a whole bunch more roadways that we're gonna have to figure out, the funding and prioritization to make sure we keep the transportation network, the roadways up to par so that they're usable for everybody. What else did we hear? Downtown needs more parking. Where is the parking? And I know we have probably talked about parking so much this evening that everybody is well aware. But there are a lot of parking spaces downtown, and now it's a matter of moving forward and highlighting those, identifying, make sure it's easy for folks that not only live here, but maybe coming and visiting can find it, they feel safe using it. So that is well underway, but again, that was one of the points that we had heard quite a bit about. The existing comprehensive plan, though it's a little older, the transportation goals in it are still pretty relevant. They're pretty solid themes just in general for a transportation network, so I thought it would be good to just take a peek at what's existing there. And it's a goal for a connected and balanced multimodal network that's affordable, it looks good, you're preserving nature, everybody can use it, it's accessible. Parking considerations, again, parking. Doing a good job there on that one and making sure we've got enough parking now and as we grow. And then also circling back to the multi-use trail system, we talked about creating a community and connecting, as Gary said. So having trails that connect to pedestrian points you want to go to, not just, here's some piece of pavement and an easement that we got. It goes from A to B and something that people will use. So, what are the numbers telling us? What are we finding? This map right here may be a little difficult to see. This is a readout of the existing 2019, that was the latest traffic counts that we had from DOT. Daily congestion. It's from the Triangle Regional Model, which is a model, as it indicates, that encompasses Wake County and stretches out beyond Wake County's border. And what it does is a massive network of roadways so we can get a better regional, if you will, view of how things play and interact and what, if there's a bypass over here, how might that impact traffic getting, to Zebulon? If there were to model a truck bypass on the western side, this model would take that into account and show, okay, well, what does that do to our traffic downtown? So this is a snapshot, take it with a grain of salt. And again, this is the daily traffic. So now this isn't to say that during an AM or PM peak hour that some of these roadways that you see are green wouldn't experience congestion and be over capacity. It's just on balance during the day. There's generally the capacity there, it's just managing it during peak hours. So you can see right through that middle there, that yellow line, that is 64, and the interchange north of that is red. Again, that's that area up to Pierce's that we were talking about. That's, everybody's feeling it there, existing. And then also downtown, Arundel and Gannon is another hot spot. Switching modes, the sidewalk network. This line the lines on here represent roadways that have sidewalks on either one or both sides of the road, just if it is available. The town, I believe they said they were maintaining about 13 miles of sidewalk on all right now. As you can see, there's gaps in the sidewalk network. That's really what people are focusing on and wanting to fill in so that you can make a complete trip one way or the other to a destination and back, and not have to walk along the side of the roadway or walk in the roadway, and really kind of create that connectivity from the north where the residential is starting to bloom and people are going to be down south, and then eventually across, across the study area as things grow. A different mode, transit. What are we finding with this? Well, there's availability. It's an express route that goes through Wendell and down to Raleigh. There's a park and ride facility. It picks up about 3 times in the morning, 6, 7, and 8 a.m. And in the evenings, it drops about 3 times. And I think that's 5, 6, and 7 p.m. with a couple other times during the day. Don't have ridership numbers on that, but that is available. A look at safety and the crash information. This map has a lot on it. It's okay. This is the study area, and again, it's a generalization of the roadway segments. Red is a high crash score. It's not, it's not a really well operating or safe corridor. The dots are for the intersections, and the colors represent the number of intersections, or the number of wrecks at the intersection, and then also we've got some circles with an X in it is where fatal wrecks have occurred in the last 5 years of data. So this just zooms a little more into town instead of our whole study area, so you can kind of pick up on, as you may suspect, as Gary said, maybe not a surprise here. 64 is pretty red. Arundel, pretty red. Arundel at Gannon, red dot. Shepherd School up at Bunn, it's a green dot, but there was a fatality there. And these are reflected in the Northeast Area Study that is also ongoing at this time, and they're doing a hotspot analysis of the area to see which intersections are problematic, and that's based on crash severity, traffic volumes, and a whole bunch of different factors. And that study has recently confirmed that essentially the Proctor corridor, if you will, is, I think Mike has some more specific numbers that are very interesting to share on it, but it's essentially, just as a corridor, been identified as something that needs improvement for safety-wise. I think it was 600% over the state average for the crash rate and the wrecks. So that's pretty significant there. So part of what we'll be doing and looking at in the next phase of this is what are projects or things that we can prioritize to help improve this, and or as development comes in, get them to buy in and help improve these areas. So a little bit of what's coming as far as improvements. First one right here is a new signal at Green Pace and Arundel. That is coming, I believe construction is within the next year, so that one's well on its way. Similarly, Shepherd School Road at Old Bunn Road, that's also in design, and I believe next fiscal year is going to be the installation of that. And then also the NC 96 improvements to really kind of restrict access, take away some of those left turn movements, reroute traffic a little bit, so it just makes it safer for everybody getting in and out of those businesses, and frankly, makes it more appealing to visit them. So that, I believe, is in right-of-way acquisition, which is the town either purchasing land from landowners or eminent domain if necessary. So where are we going? For the transportation plan specifically, we are documenting improvements that are needed or have already been programmed as part of a DOT funding or Campo, the regional planning organization, or developers that are contributing stuff. So we need to make sure those are appropriately recognized. We're also going to incorporate other plans that are recently underway to make sure there's no gaps or we're not, terribly recommending contradictory things. So this will include the Northeast area study information when they get done to make sure that the hotspots are matching up and that there's really a full force. If there's certain intersections that need help, that yes, these plans all support that. So that's, let's go get funding for it. As well as the Greenway and Parks plan to make sure our pedestrian connections and multi-use trails are really flushing out our network. And as we move forward, we're going to evaluate the proposed land use growth goals that Gary's team is working on, see where that looks like in the future and how we can best integrate the transportation facilities to support that and create a really robust network that is, again, not just single vehicle focused. It's for walkers, it's for bikers, it's for everybody, and really helps create a complete community. And both plans, the schedule we are on now, will have us coming back in work session in spring with a draft of both plans for review and comment. So we're gonna turn and burn here and get these plans moving and be back in front of y'all for input then. And that is me. I guess questions or?
Anybody have any questions?
So I see on page 47, you've got, as part of the multimodal transportation plan, Appendix A, that there are several roundabouts, traffic circles. Are those, but those are just what you are proposing?
So this, I should clarify, thanks for that. The plan is not from us. This is a snapshot from the multimodal transportation plan update that Zebulon has done recently.
Okay.
This I was using to show which projects are coming along. Now, the recommendations on this plan do get taken into account when we look at our plan and the future land uses to see if it still makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Others? Thank you.
Mayor and Commissioners, what I wanted to mention to wrap up is, I mentioned to Mike, when we were going through this COVID period, couldn't do our public activities. The hard part was, didn't feel like we had enough base of information to move forward and do these plans. After that round of meetings in September, October, and the survey Mike did, absolutely. Because you start to hear the same themes, different people across the community saying the same things. It reinforces the strategic plan, as the town manager mentioned, and all these pieces are fitting together well. So I think we have a good base of input to now move forward on the plans.
Thank you.
Okay, to wrap all this up, the two parts that you heard tonight actually work concurrently with each other. The information that Dane Douglas provided in terms of the discussions from the downtown business owners and the downtown property owners, part of the reason that you heard those tonight was also so our consultants could hear those and really understand the dynamics of what they're looking for in downtown. Same thing with our downtown associate community program. The information that needs to go into that action plan came from those initial discussions, but also corresponds with some of the land use activities that are going to be put forth in the comprehensive land use plan. Moving forward, what we're going to do is our consultants are going to be working with our focus groups as well as several others in the community starting tomorrow as well as February. They'll be coming back before you as well as the planning board for a group discussion tentatively in April with a joint public hearing in May at the regularly scheduled joint public hearing date. Statutorily, the planning board will have to make a recommendation before you, and then we hope to have a decision and a final product before you for decision at the June meeting. Between now and then, if you do have any ideas, suggestions, concerns, please do not hesitate to reach out to me, and I'll make sure that they're forwarded to either the transportation plan consultant or the land use plan consultant. And with that, I am available if you have any closing questions. All right, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, utility merger agreement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the board. I know this has been a long evening for you, so I'll try to get through this real quickly. Some reading material that's been left for you, some good reference material. So in front of you is the original merger agreement. I thought that that would be good reference material for you to have. In addition to that, this agreement has been amended at least one time, and so the first amendment to that agreement is also in front of you as well. And then I'll explain this in the presentation, but we also have given you some draft easement maps of what we're looking to include in the second amendment. So real quickly, I wanted to give you an update of where we are. Right now, the terms of agreement, or the terms that we're negotiating with the City of Raleigh, revolve around capacity, sale back of water and sewer capacity, as well as the transfer of cash to pay down the debt. We've got some variables that we want to keep you apprised of, and we're also looking to include some property transactions that clean up some old issues and create some opportunities for future opportunities. So on the capacity and cash side, as of October, this is what would have been required to retire the debt. So the sellback of 390,000 gallons in sewer, 100,000 gallons in water, and $500,000. The variables have to do with time. So those numbers, or those sellback numbers, were based upon October. Obviously, we're past October. As we continue to go further in time and as we grow as a town, we won't have to sell back as much. And so time is going to have an influence on the amount of capacity that you have to sell back. So we're trying to craft some language that captures that variability on how much capacity you sell back. One of the things that we have to be conscientious of is you don't want to sell back too much of one quantity, such as water, and not enough of sewer. They've got to be roughly balanced. There is, just by how water is used, there's always going to be about a 10% discrepancy. You're always going to use more water than you do sewer, because not all water goes back into the sewer system, irrigation being an example. But one of the things that we'll have to take into account is just how to balance how much water we sell back. We sell back too much of one. As an example, if you run out of water, it doesn't matter how much sewer capacity you've got. So that's just another detail to keep you apprised of. The one constant that will remain, however, is in the cash. And the reason that that is constant is, one, because of the value, but also because of the limitations of what the cash can be used for. The value is probably going to be higher to hold on to some capacity rather than cash. You can always get cash in the future. It's going to be more difficult to get capacity back. So that's one reason we're looking to keep cash constant. The other reason we're looking to keep it constant is because that cash was collected as an impact fee, so it can only be used for this purpose of buying down the debt. And so since it was earmarked, I'll be a little bit more specific. When the development along Old Bun Road was going into place, those developers, before the state law changed, had to pay an impact fee. That impact fee was earmarked to pay down this debt. Therefore, the cash that we've collected, close to $500,000, has to go to paying off that debt. One of the things to be apprised of as well, when I talk about development accounting, you will have on paper more sewer capacity than is available at the Little Creek wastewater treatment plant. And so one of the things that the city of Raleigh will be obligated to do as you get closer and closer to the sewer capacity at the wastewater treatment plant is they're going to have to construct some major infrastructure to transfer the sewage or wastewater back across the ridge line towards their wastewater facility. And so one of the things that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to keep them very much apprised of how much development activity that we've got going on so that they can start to plan for, start to do the permitting, the design, and the construction of that major infrastructure as we get closer and closer to the capacity of the wastewater treatment plant. Once again, we'll have much more paper capacity, but we'll be limited on what we have, what kind of capacity we've got at the sewer plant.
So let me ask a question on that. Middlesex shipped their sewer here, and my understanding is, and it is simply an understanding, I don't know it for fact, that Raleigh just sold more capacity to Middlesex. Do you know if that's right?
I do. That's,
Well, let me
yeah,
go
that's
one step
complicated, but
further
go ahead.
Where I'm trying to get to with
Yep.
that, because you answered the question, yes. Can they sell that capacity out from under us and put us in a situation where we might end up in a moratorium because we don't have sewer capacity?
That's a good detail to make sure that that doesn't happen. That's one of the reasons for us to bring this to you. Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
okay.
All right. Thank you. That Middlesex agreement it's got history to it, and it's hard to uncover, so it's really helpful to hear that historic perspective.
Yeah, well, we defined the lines, we put in, the lift station didn't go where we thought it should go. We thought it should be up closer to the creek, which would accept flow better, for example, from Progress Energy's plant down there. But during that agreement, we defined some of the boundaries between Middlesex and Zebulon, but I am more concerned about us not being put in a moratorium situation, as I explained, because of capacity being sold out from under us.
Yeah, that's a fair concern.
Okay.
Is there another question? All right. We're also going to try to pull in together and clean up some issues on some property transactions, as well as create some future opportunities with other property transactions. The first is on Little River Park. So this is an aerial map of Little River Park. This is the dam right here. This particular, the disposition of the property caused an awful lot of confusion and delay, as an example, when we were pursuing funding through FEMA to either when we were considering whether to repair or use the money for an alternate purpose. And the reason was because the city of Raleigh owned all this property north of this cursor, so that included the dam. And so when the FEMA opportunity came up, both Zebulon and Raleigh applied for it. The reason for the confusion is the property was supposed to transfer with the merger agreement, but the property was never transferred at the courthouse. So it showed, in essence, two owners of that property. So we're cleaning that issue up as well as taking care of some other issues. The other issues are, at one time, they had talked about wanting to keep this water intake structure here, as well as maintain an easement for the pipe that went to the old water treatment plant. There's no need or use of Little River as a water intake, so they're going to demolish that intake facility as well as remove that pipe. The only purposes they have left on this property is the fence line around the old park, and then there's a pumping station right here. So this amendment to not only close out the agreement is to clarify that and return all this property cleanly to the town of Zebulon. So that's one property transfer that we're trying to clarify. I'll pause to see if there's any questions. That's what the easement map looks like. I thought the aerial was a better way to describe it, but you've got that as an attachment, and that will be included in the attachment through this second amendment. The other facility is a Little Creek wastewater facility. So this is an aerial. This is 5 County Stadium right here. This is U.S. Foods. Down here is the wastewater treatment facility. So one of the things that we're trying to do is we're trying to coordinate future greenways in the area. One has been identified on your Greenway Master Plan as, I think, Greenway number 10. Some in the room affectionately call it the catwalk. The other greenway is to connect this hatched area down here, which is the Sidney Creek development, to provide a greenway connection between this residential development and this and 5 County Stadium. So we're trying to coordinate a roughly east-west greenway and roughly a north-south greenway to go across the wastewater treatment facility. So we're looking to reserve easement across this property as part of this second amendment. So those are the overarching terms. We continue to negotiate. I just wanted to keep you abreast of what's going on. I don't want to keep you up to speed, but as the mayor just provide us with some information so that we're going in knowing a fuller story. And with that, yeah, that's just an easement map showing what I just described. For that, I'll take any questions or comments that you may have.
So how far away do you think you are from finishing up the negotiations?
I think it's reasonable to say that at your February regular meeting, we could bring you a draft for you to consider.
Oh, as you pointed out, we're closing that gap. So it's taking a lot longer than we expected, I think. So
Yep.
I just was wondering.
I mean, that's my guess. I think you could have a contract.
You answered my question.
Yep.
Thank you.
Our contract has us returning $390,000 worth of, or gallons worth of sewer capacity and 100,000 worth of water. And from what you were saying earlier, really, was the water and sewer balanced when we first purchased it, and now we're going to be returning more sewer capacity than we really should? I'm concerned about that because that seems to be a driving factor.
Yeah, okay, so one of the things is there's going to be a natural, as I mentioned, there's a natural balance, so giving back more sewer traditionally is not necessarily a bad thing. When you have the chance to look at the First Amendment, you'll see that we've already sold back some water, so we're already in the hole, so to speak. So selling back more sewer because of the natural differential, in addition to the fact that we've already sold some water back,
Okay.
we should be all right.
Did you ever verify that my recollection was 300,000 is what we sold back before?
That sounds right. That'll be in the That'll be in the first amendment. That sounds right, actually.
Yeah, I know it's in there, and I thumbed real quickly,
Yeah.
but then I put it down to listen to you, so.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. That was back, 10 years ago, maybe?
Well,
And that's just a
very close
guess.
to it, yeah.
That's just a guess, I don't remember for sure. Anyway, the way the original numbers were established was we had 1.2 million production capability out of our own plant. Supposedly, it turned out we couldn't get that much out of the river, but that was what the number we had, and then we were buying 1 million a day from the city of Raleigh. So that's where the original 2.2 came from, or whatever the number was. Excuse me. Anything else? Any other questions?
And there are some situations where Raleigh approves the water and they don't approve the sewer. Is that correct?
In town development?
Developments.
Yes.
So that may also cause why it's not always going to be equal.
In fact, you just heard a conditional zoning on Monday night. That's a direct reflection of that.
Well, the veterinary clinic is another. There's a few around. It just was not practical. To run sewer was not practical. There's not a whole lot of them though, Glenn. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you, Joe. COVID related.
Yeah, so I just want to follow up on what I had mentioned to you Monday night. So just to reiterate, just for the community, that Friday we're closing down the community center to public access. We're suspending rentals of facilities as well as suspending recreation programs. That will be through at least the middle of January. The thing that I told you that we were considering was whether to close down Town Hall to public access. I think what our approach is going to be is this, is that last week in December, we don't have a lot of customers coming in. We also are already closed for 2 days of that week for the holidays. It affords us a real good opportunity to deep clean and sanitize this building. So we're going to keep it closed to public access so we can do that deep cleaning. One of the problems and one of the good things is that following week, we've got a lot of utility customers that they just don't have the capability to pay their utility bill electronically. And the drop-off box doesn't quite work well for them, especially when they need change. I think that we have segmented and protected staff, and also because our planning department is using a lot more of electronic submittals with their IDT process, and our Parks and Rec programs are utilizing more electronic access through their rec desk. We don't have as many people circulating through the lobby, so I think we can keep Town Hall open to the public. I'll just be working with staff for them not to schedule meetings where they're bringing people in and just doing things remotely. And the only times that we'll have people coming in is for your meetings, which is going to be your regular meeting, and then the joint public hearing. So that's the plan right now.
Okay.
That concludes my report.
All right, thank you. Okay, time marches on. We have a closed session that's permitted by North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A6 for the purpose of personnel discussion. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Second. All in favor, show of hand. Okay, we'll take a short break, and then we'll meet in the other room.